Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our YouTube channel for the Renew Students Youth Ministry. We have been walking through the book of Mark, talking a little bit about two main questions. We've been answering the question of who is Jesus, and we've kind of talked about that in each of the stories that we've discussed and things like that. And then we've also started discussing who are we because of who Jesus is. And so where we last left off last week, we encountered a couple of very interesting stories. One of those stories, Jesus is talking with his disciples, and he is talking about who do they think that he is. And they answer kind of in a roundabout way, talking, some people say this, some people say you're this person. Jesus says, but who do you say that I am? And one of his disciples, Peter, speaks up and says, I believe you're the Christ, the Messiah. And Jesus says, pretty much, yep, that's accurate. And so as we kind of come out of that story, the tone shifts quite a bit in the book of Mark. And Jesus then starts talking a lot about how he is going to die soon. And now this, because he was supposed to be the Messiah, he was supposed to be the Christ, the disciples would have had a very different understanding of who Jesus was supposed to be. They would have thought that he came to overthrow the government, that he was going to bring the kingdom of God into the land, and that everything was going to be great again. Because currently, the people that the disciples came from, they were under oppression from the current government, and so they were waiting for God to make it right for them again. And so they thought Jesus was going to be that guy. But instead, Jesus starts talking about how he's going to die, and his disciples can't really understand what exactly he's saying. Even though he's speaking in very clear language to them, I'm going to die. They're like, no, that's not going to happen. No, that's not real. But Jesus keeps saying it. He keeps saying, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. But he also keeps saying, but I also will come back to life. And so the disciples are like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, that's fine. And then where we last left off, the very last story, we have this guy who brought his son to Jesus, who was asking for Jesus to heal his son of this spirit, and just basically said, I believe in you, but help me in my unbelief. And I think that's a key point for us all as we continue on of, even if you believe in Jesus and you believe who he is, we're asking him to help us in our unbelief, because maybe we don't see him as clearly as we think we do, kind of like the disciples didn't.
Yeah, so the disciples and Jesus had just finished a journey. And when they were returning for a certain city, Jesus hears that the disciples are really like murmuring, talking with each other, and they're just like, having this whole discussion on the way back. And so then he says, okay, wait a second, what are you guys talking about? And they start looking to each other all like embarrassed, because really they had been discussing who was the greatest between all of them. Again, they thought Jesus was going to be some sort of king that was going to raise up an army and take over the land, and then those who were with him from the beginning, the disciples, they would be able to also be rulers and like high people of in this high status. And again, Jesus has to tell them, this isn't really what being the greatest is among us, among what is the kingdom of God, what Jesus was trying to tell people. And he says that the greatest among all of you is the one who serves, the one who is a servant, who helps others, who serves others, who makes sure that the people around them are being taken care of, are being loved, which is completely different from what we think about in our world. We tend to think that the one who is the greatest has maybe more money or more power or has a lot more responsibilities. But Jesus just completely flips that around and says, no, really the greatest among you is the one who serves. Which he then says, it's okay, you see the children around us? if you take one of these children and help them in my name, then I will receive you. And because I receive you, then God will be able to receive you the way that you are. And that's just really indicating he came to earth as a servant to help all of us. So he wants now his disciples to do the same.
And so I think that completely changes our perspective of how we're supposed to live our lives too. Because if Jesus, who is supposed to be the greatest of all, which is actually part of the funny part of the story, is the disciples are arguing about who is the greatest. And clearly it's Jesus, but they kind of ignore that fact for a moment. But if Jesus, who is supposed to be the greatest of all, comes down, and as he predicts, he eventually does die. If he's supposed to be the greatest of all and instead is serving those around him, then we should be taking notice of that. And if Jesus is and was a servant, we should be too. We should make sure that we aren't trying to be the greatest by having a lot of money or having a lot of jobs or having cars or things like that. We really need to be evaluating how great we are based on how are we serving and how well are we serving. Are we making sure to take care of, like as Jesus says, are we making sure to take care of little children? Are we making sure to take care of the poor and the needy? Are we making sure to be able to serve those around us who can't even give anything back to us, essentially? And so I think that's a really important thing for us to think about is how well are you serving like Jesus served? And so we'll leave it right there because we'll talk more about this as we continue on. But we will see you tonight for youth, and we'll see you on Saturday with our next video.
See ya.